everybody. Welcome to Food Literacy for All 2022. And I want to give a warm welcome to both students and community members and to people near and far joining us from Michigan, around the country, perhaps even around the world. We're so glad you're here with us this evening. If this is your first time here, Food Literacy for All is a course at the University of Michigan. So some students are here who are enrolled in taking this class for credit. And I think this year we have around 200 or maybe over 200 students enrolled. But it's also a lecture series that is free and it's open to the public and for anyone who wants to come. So you're welcome to invite others as for future sessions. So this is the 6th year of Food Literacy for All, and it is co-led by a team of university folks at the University of Michigan, as well as community leaders. And so it is an honor to co-lead this 2022 class alongside Dr. Margot and Winona Bynum. So great to work with both of you. And actually this class is really, there's a whole team of people behind it. I also want to, Asha McElroy, I'll invite the whole team to introduce yourselves. So I'll invite everybody to introduce themselves first and then I'll go last. So we'll start with Winona, if you want to come on and say a quick hello.
Hello, hi everyone. So happy to be here. I'm excited to be co-instructing the class. I've been associated with the class since its inception, and this is my first time in this role, but I'm really excited to be here. And as Lilly said, I am the executive director of the Detroit Food Policy Council. Thanks.
Thanks, Winona. And Margot, can you say hi?
Hi, I'm Margot Finn. I teach in applied liberal arts, mostly classes about food. And I also research and write about food. I am interested in the stories that people tell about food, and I am so excited to be part of this course this semester.
Thanks, Margot. And I'll give a warm shout out and thank you to both Asha McElroy and Kimmy Vandywedge, who give so much support behind the scenes for the Sustainable Food Systems Initiative and food literacy. And then next I'll invite up Jess.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jess Tong. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a second-year master's student at SEAS. I specialize in environmental justice, and I'm really looking forward to our learning community this semester. You can feel free to contact me with questions, comments, concerns about the course or otherwise. Feel free to reach out via email or office hours, and I'm as available as you need me to be.
Thank you, Jess. Sam, you want to come say hi?
Hey everyone, hello, my name is Sam Limerick, he, his pronouns. I am also GSI supporting this course, really looking forward to it. I am a second-year graduate student in urban planning and environmental policy in SEAS, and like Jess, students who are enrolled can feel free to contact me by email for any questions about the course, assignments, which we'll learn a little bit more about later, or just anything. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam. Chris, do you want to come say hello?
Hi, I'm Chris Taylor. I work at LSA Media Services, specializing in video conferencing.
All right, and Chris, what Chris didn't say is that I don't know if we should say he's really tech support or if he's also our DJ for this class, which is true. He's really both of those things. So thank you in advance for music today and future music for this course. So my name is Lilly Fink Shapiro. I have co-led the Food Literacy for All class since the beginning and helped to dream it up before it was even a course. And it's really, I love this course. I'm so lucky to work with an incredible team every year. I love that I feel like I have one foot in the university and one foot working with folks in the community who are doing incredible work. So there's even more people to thank and acknowledge, more groups before we get going. So this course, there's so many different groups that support the course. I want to give them all a shout out. So the Center for the Education of Women, the Francis and Sidney Lewis Visiting Leaders Fund, the Residential College, the School of Public Health, Department of Nutritional Sciences, the Taubman Institute, an Institute for Healthcare Policy and Innovation, the Department of American Culture, and the Department of Anthropology all make this course possible. So a few words about the group that I work with, the University of Michigan Sustainable Food Systems Initiative, or SFSI. So we are a group of over 70 affiliated faculty and staff all across campus, super interdisciplinary. It's a group of people who study the food system and teach about the food system in different ways. We have folks who study food from a policy lens, from an agroecology, social justice, public health, nutrition, urban planning, all these different lenses to look at the food system. And this group kind of tries to tie a lasso around those various people and ways to study the food system to bring together this really rich interdisciplinary community of people who are thinking critically about the food system. You undergrads in the class, maybe you know, maybe you don't, we have an undergraduate minor in food and the environment that's relatively new. We also have a graduate certificate in sustainable food systems. It's through SEAS, the School for Environment and Sustainability. Every year, SFSI puts out a list of food systems courses that's happening each semester. So if you're interested in taking food courses across campus, we can help you out with that. They're available on our website. Actually, if somebody can drop, Jess or Sam, if one of you can drop the SFSI website link into the chat box, that might be helpful. We also have a brand new TFS fellowship. This is the Transformative Food Systems Fellowship, and it's for underrepresented students who want to come to graduate school and study food systems. And I'm announcing this because applications are due January 31st. There's a hefty $85K stipend and scholarship that goes along with it. And it's in 3 schools: SEAS, School of Public Health, and Urban Planning. It's an incredible opportunity. We're so excited to be offering this. So please either apply yourself if you're interested or help us spread the word, due January 31st. Okay, so a bit more about this class and what makes it special. So here are some of the goals of the course. We're going to learn from practitioners and activists and scholars working across the food system, a really neat, diverse group of people. We're intending to link multiple forms of knowledge, and we're not just lifting up knowledge of the ivory tower. We really also value community-based voices and indigenous knowledge and other types of knowing. We aim to increase diversity and inclusion within food systems education and practice. And we also, through this course, aim to strengthen university and community partnerships and relationships. Like I said at the beginning, the class is free and open to the public. So if you're all here, you clearly all registered for the webinar, so I don't need to teach you how to do that. But I do want to remind students that if you're here, to please use your UMich email when you register for the webinar, because it's going to be tied to tracking attendance. So there's a few different ways to engage in the class. One is, if you like Twitter, you can use the hashtag Food Literacy for All to engage and discuss with others tuning in live or after the fact. It can help connect conversations. We are going to be using poll questions kind of scattered throughout the class. So when a poll question comes up, we hope that you will participate. Also, we don't have video cameras, of course, virtually that look like this. We used to in person, but all of the classes will be filmed and available. We're going to make them all available on YouTube and on the SFSI website. So it's going to be very easy to find. I think even if you Google Food Literacy for All videos, you'll probably make your way there. If you have questions, you'll see there's a Q&A box that you can click on your Zoom screen. Those are questions specifically for the speaker, for the host, that we will try to get to as many as we can. We aim to leave room each time for questions. Another way to engage, we're going to use a platform called Miro. And Jess, if you can drop a link to it in there, you can explore it. I think Miro calls itself a collaborative whiteboard platform, and you'll see there's little sticky notes, and you can put quotes from speakers, or if there's things you want to discuss. And this is more of a place, if you don't have a question specifically for the speaker, but something you loved what somebody said, you hated what someone said, you had strong feelings about it, made you uncomfortable, you need to process it more, this is the place for that. And we realized that this is a benefit of being virtual, that even when we were in person, it was hard to discuss with people around you what they were thinking. So we will share a link to Miro each class session, and if you are so moved, feel free to participate. And you can also, if somebody writes a quote that you like, you can give it a thumbs up, or you can say you also like it, or you can make comments. It's pretty neat. So check it out. Okay, I won't spend too much time on this, but for students enrolled in the class, these are some course details. So hopefully you've already seen that the syllabus is posted on the website, and we won't spend too much time on these things typically in class because there's also community members enrolled in the course, and people watching the videos probably aren't that interested in these details. But we do plan to leave a little bit of time at the end of each class. We're calling it the nuts and bolts time for specifically for students, and we're going to this kind of thing, or if folks have questions. So you can see here the 4 main graded components of the course listed out, and we'll also be populating the Canvas with some extra credit opportunities throughout the semester. Okay, so let's do our first poll questions, just get a sense of the Zoom room and who is here. For one, I am curious about where people are tuning in from. So if you are tuning in from elsewhere that's not Michigan, or if you're in another state or another country, it'd be fun if you just type those in the chat box. And then I don't think you guys can see what each other write in the chat box, but a member of our team can retype them out. Okay, it looks like I'm already seeing that a lot of people are in Southeast Michigan. Some are in other parts of Michigan. Some are in another state. 7% of you are in another state. A couple of you are outside the US, and feel free to tell us where in the chat box. We've got 75% of you are students enrolled for credit. And then we've got a whole range. Okay, so I think, Sam, you can end the poll and show folks the results. All right. And then to keep going, I think everyone, you can either close out of the polls, or can you close out of it, Sam? Stop sharing. You can keep moving. One other poll question is, I'm curious in terms of who's with us, and this is a broad question. It's, do you currently or have you ever worked in the food system? And you can interpret this broadly, but I'm curious to see how folks will respond. So A, yes, B, no, C, not sure. Wow, okay, more than half of you say yes. 50-some% of you say yes. 7-8% of you is not sure. But that's interesting to hear that half of you say yes, you have worked in the food system. And if you want to tell us more in the chat box too, and then maybe a member of our course team, if there's some interesting answers, you can share that with everybody in the chat. It'd be fun to see. Okay, thanks. We can end that one, Sam. All right. Okay, so I'm going to give you a brief overview of the semester and share with you all of the guest speakers and panels and conversations that are going to be happening, starting with Emily Contois, who's coming next week, next Tuesday. Her talk is called Food Media, Dudes and Athletes. What can they teach us about food literacy and liberation? Then following Emily, it's taking a minute. Oops, sorry. Following Emily is Marilyn Wan and Chef Fresh. They're going to do, their talk is going to be about freedom, food, and fat, reclaiming our bodies and our worlds from oppressive weight hierarchies as part of anti-racism, environmental justice, and more. Followed by Fatima Stanford, who's an MD, and Dr. Stanford is going to talk about the role of weight bias on health outcomes. So similar topic, but different perspective. And sorry, it's a little slow to advance sometimes. Here we go. Followed by Marcus Coleman and Angela Chalk. Their talk about beginning farmers, environment, and feeding community on February 8th. Then Priya Fielding Singh, How the Other Half Eats, the Untold Story of Food and Inequality in America. Her book just came out. I have it right here. I'm very good at it and so excited that she's joining us. Then Hailai Hobart is giving a presentation the day before, a live talk in person that folks can join in Ann Arbor, and then joining us for a conversation with Dr. Finn, What Shave Ice Teaches About Refreshment, Race, Colonialism, and Body Politics. Deanna Bellini, who's she was a founder of this group Diversified Dietetics, and I know that Winona Bynum can tell you more about it. She's also involved. She's going to talk about cultivating a food system grounded in equity, the role of healthcare and healthcare providers. And then we're going to have a conversation with Dr. Shante Reese and Malik Yakini. And many of you might know Malik. He was actually a co-instructor, community co-instructor of this course back in 2017 and 2018, and still partners with the course, where food justice theory meets practice, challenges, and opportunities for the future of food. Then Savala Nolan is going to talk about race, gender, and the body, joining us from UC Berkeley. And then we're going to have a panel with a small grocer panel with Raphael Wright, Alita Kelly, and Jason from Galleria Market in Ann Arbor about supplying kimchi and collards during a global pandemic. Then Anthony Hatch, metabolism cages and for New World animals, large and small. And then the last one is going to be Fast Food for Thought on April 12th. And it's going to be, some of you might know this event, it's usually in the fall, but this year it's a part of food literacy. It's going to be 10 really quick talks by some of our affiliated faculty members who study food and agriculture. Okay, hopefully that gives you a flavor of the semester. And now I'm going to pass the mic to Winona.
Thank you. Thanks, Lily. All right, so yeah. So nice to have everybody here. So good. Wish we were in the room together. I know we've been saying that for 2 years, but it is nice to be here with you. I am just going to talk a little bit about myself, how I got to doing what I do, and a little bit about how the work that I do at the Food Policy Council, how it fits in with the theme of this course. Next, please. So a little bit about me. So I, by training, am a registered dietitian, and that is my second career. My first was in IT. This subject, when we're going to be talking a lot about health at every size, about weight bias, and it really struck me when we were talking about this. So the way I got interested in food, I was actually in IT. And so when you are in IT, information technology, you have odd hours, you work crazy hours a lot of times, and I did. And so I also didn't eat very well. I just grabbed whatever there was. And I started to feel pretty bad. But at the same time, I didn't have a weight issue. I was what is considered a normal weight. And so most people didn't really pay attention to my bad eating habits. Fortunately, I did have one manager who looked at me and said, you know, you may not feel well because of the way you eat. And so I started to eat differently. I wanted to know more about it, started to read about food and the power of it. And when I got the opportunity to go back to school, I began to study dietetics. But once I was in school, back out in community, I was doing a lot of volunteer work, working with community organizations. And what I realized was that not everyone had access to healthy food. Not everyone could get it. And then I also started to look around because I've lived in the city my whole life in Detroit. And I looked around and it was more difficult at that time, especially to get the healthy foods that I needed. A lot of times I would go outside of Detroit to get those things. So it slowly started to change my perspective and to just think about food in a different way. And I took a class, I got my dietetics, went through the dietetics program at Wayne State University. And there was a course, but on a smaller level that was much like this. It was a lecture course, but it was talking to people working in the food systems locally. It was called Cities and Food. And that's where I decided to, I started to think about how could I use my nutrition knowledge a little bit differently. First, I worked at the food bank, and then first I worked for Fair Food Network, doing a little bit of community organizing and helping to set up a food policy council-like organization in Battle Creek. and then worked for the food bank, Gleaners Community Food Bank here in Southeast Michigan. But I started to really look at it was a bigger thing. It's more than just a one-person thing. It's really a systems thing. We need better policies, and that is how I got to the Food Policy Council, kind of just looking at one thing and taking the next step and really looking at why systems change is so important. And I think that's one of the things we hope you take away from this class, as well as how, you know, so many biases and prejudices, they cut both ways. Like I said, I wasn't told about eating properly because I wasn't overweight or so-called overweight. Because we'll be challenging that, what really is overweight, but I wasn't so-called overweight. And so people didn't think about that. And then another person might be so-called overweight and that's all they hear, and not, other things aren't addressed. So it'll be really interesting to look at that. Okay, so that's enough about me, but I'm really happy to be here. Like I said, from the beginning, I have been working with this class. I think it's the coolest thing, just to have the community university partnership and to get to work with this team. Been working with Lilly in some aspects since the beginning of this, and really have enjoyed working with the whole team and Dr. Finn, Margot Finn. Okay, next slide, please. So I'll get into a little bit about what we do at the Food Policy Council, a little bit about the history and structure, and just seeing how this work, why I've been so interested in this class, because I'm so excited that you're taking a class, so excited for everybody who participates and listens to these lectures and the Q&A and all of that, because I think no matter what discipline you are, mine was nutrition, but there's so many disciplines, we all eat, and you hopefully will take this perspective and you will apply your discipline to help bring about systems change. Okay, next slide, please. So first of all, what is a Food Policy Council? This is a basic definition of it, but basically it's social infrastructure, people talking across tables, talking across disciplines to get things done on a systems level, not just individual actions. Yes, that is important, but really looking at how do the interconnected pieces work. And so when I started, if we were, I won't ask you to raise your virtual hands, but if we were in the auditorium, that is what I normally do. And when I started with the Food Policy Council, I've been with the Food Policy Council for 7 years this month. Most people had not heard of what a Food Policy Council is. Fortunately, that's changing. So excited to see that. Okay, next slide, please. So our mission and vision, and once again, I'm not going to read this to you, but what I'm struck with, so the Food Policy Council, our Food Policy Council, as I'll talk a little bit more about, came out of community action. So a lot of food policy councils come from a health department, or they come from like some kind of government entity, like a governor's office or a mayor's office, but ours actually came out of community action. One of the things I'm struck with is that the original vision and mission and bylaws and all of that they started writing in 2006 address food sovereignty, equity, justice, food justice. Those things were written into our original charter documents. And in 2006, that was something that wasn't talked about as much or as often. And so I'm really struck that and grateful to be able to work for an organization that at its core has always championed those types of things. Okay, next, please. So, like I said, 2006 is when really community organizers, the Detroit Black Community Food Security and other advocates and activists around Detroit presented this idea of having a food policy council to city council. They went back and they wrote a food security policy, and that policy was adopted in 2008. The resolution was passed and adopted by unanimous vote approval by the city council. We had our first meeting in 2009. And for the first 2 years of the organization, it was all volunteer. And in 2011, the first employee was hired. Next, please. So currently we have 23 council members. They are from all sectors of the food system, 15 sectors of the food system. So we have a faith-based seat, environmental justice seat, planning, urban planning seat, sustainable farming, K through 12. So all of those people can talk across the table and see how those pieces work together. 4 at-large members, that's just for anybody who eats and is interested in a food system. 1 youth member, 3 city appointees. So the way we keep loosely connected to our local government is there is an appointee from the mayor's office, 1 from city council, and 1 from the health department. And we get our work done through committees. So those are our 4 committees that are listed. Next, please. These are our philosophies. Again, this is from the beginning: justice, respect, integrity, inclusion, transparency. And so I am really, again, just grateful to work with an organization, work for an organization, and be engaged in this work and have these kind of values and principles as our guiding philosophy. Next, please. So a little bit about our work, and we can just go to the next slide. So all of our work, like I said, food sovereignty was written into our original reason for being, is to have a food sovereign Detroit. So this is one of the definitions that I like to use. But really where it goes, so many people, we concentrate on just food access, but that doesn't give people a voice on what they're eating, how it's provided, the ways that in which food is produced or distributed, or any of those things. And so food sovereignty really gets at that point where it's not just about having access to whatever someone thinks you should have, but being able to guide that, to have a voice in it, to make sure that you have things that are culturally appropriate. So we'll be talking more and more. And I think at the end of this lecture series, you'll just have so many ways and ways people look at that, and the ways that food sovereignty, people are working towards food sovereignty. Next, please. So this is some of our work. So we work on the federal, state, and local level. These are some of our things that we've worked on. And some of our local wins. I told you about our food security policy being adopted by the city of Detroit. So the city of Detroit actually has a food security policy. We went and we updated it, and it was updated and adopted again in 2017, that new one. One thing that I'm really proud that we were able to support. So one of our council members, the thing about the Food Policy Council is you gain support for a lot of things that are important. So one of our council members was championing or had presented the urban agriculture ordinance. So before 2013, growing produce and selling produce in the city, it was not a legally recognized activity. So it wasn't illegal, but it wasn't a legally recognized activity. So in 2013, that was changed. And so now it is a legally recognized activity. Next slide, please. And we, like I talked about, we work on the federal level. So the Child Nutrition Reauthorization Act. And I'll just tell you a little bit about this picture. This is one of our council members, Betty Wiggins, or previous council members, Betty Wiggins, was the executive director of the Office of School Nutrition in Detroit Public School Community District. And she brought salad bars. She brought garden salad schools and but also salad bars. And so this was my nephew's class. He is not pictured here. I'll tell you why in a minute, but this was his class. The salad bar, the school was K-8, and a salad bar was only available for students who were in middle school, so the 6th through 8th graders. And this was a class of 3rd graders, so they could not get the salad bar. So this was their social studies teacher, Miss Turner, was telling them about, civil rights and about, getting action, just history. And to make a long story short, they did a sit-in and these were their signs. And so they were able to get the salad bar. They got the salad bar. Now, why wasn't my nephew pictured? Because he was excited and they let him put a little bit of strong language, and his sign said, "Give us the darn salad bar now." so he didn't get pictured. But anyway, next. But the Child Nutrition Reauthorization Act is something, because it really impacts our local community members, that we always make sure that people are connected to. And that is one of our big roles, to just make sure that people know how to shape policies that impact their lives, and when they are in place, so that people can make sure that their voices are heard. Research. We have an annual food metrics report. We've done research across the city around food security. And so that helps to inform our policies. And really the one wonderful thing about us coming through community action is that we are indebted to our community members. So part of our research and a lot of our surveys, or a lot of our outreach or focus groups, all about hearing what our community members want and making sure that they know how and whom to contact to make their voices heard. And if we are in a room with any type of decision maker, also making sure that we are reflecting the community voice. Okay, next please. This is a big project of ours. So in Detroit, one of the things, and you'll be seeing one of our, and later in the semester, one of the local grocery store owners, which he has a really exciting way of, or exciting new concept for a grocery store. But in Detroit, a lot of times people hear that it's a food desert. Only about 5%, and this was pre-pandemic, it might be a little bit more than that, only about 5% of Detroit is actually what the USDA calls a food desert. However, what we have most of our grocery stores are independent grocers. So out of the 70 plus grocery stores in the city of Detroit, only 4 of them are chain grocery stores, and the rest are independent grocers. And with that, it comes some challenges, but also some opportunities. One of the opportunities is if I, go up to the owner of Kroger, I'm never going to be able to talk to the head of Kroger or Meijer, or if I am, they may or may not listen to me. Whereas an independent grocer, we have much more access to them. And so we've been working with this Detroit Grocery Coalition. As you can see, some of the community partners that are involved in this, along with community organizations that work alongside us in individual neighborhoods, to work with grocery store owners to talk to community members, to talk about how to improve their grocery offerings. Because what we found is some grocery stores do a wonderful job and then others not so much. And we want to help them all become great grocers. Next slide, please. So the Great Grocer Project, this came about, again, just community. We were talking and we were like, every community should have a great grocery store. And so that's where the Great Grocer Project. So we are working with our local grocery stores to, if they are doing a great job, to acknowledge that. If they are if they could use improvement to help them get there, to help them talk to community members about how to improve, what the community members would like to see, and so that they reflect the needs of the community. We also started a wellness initiative with the grocery stores. So grocery store workers generally are not extremely well paid. And for the work that they do, which is so important. I think we really saw that during the pandemic, how important it was. We always knew it, but it was heightened, that how important it is, the work that the grocery store workers do. And so we wanted to also take care of them. And so we have a wellness initiative because a lot of grocery store workers are actually part-time and may or may not have access to good health care. And so we provided them with things like monitoring for blood pressure monitors, and just wellness tips and things to take care of themselves. And then we've also just last year, we expanded to groceries or to corner stores, because many Detroiters access their food through dollar stores or corner stores, also known as liquor stores. Okay, next, please. So this is the rating system. I think I told you really about what's on this slide, so we can go to the next, please. Another thing I just want to highlight really quickly is, again, we so realized how grocery store workers were and are essential workers. And they had to work when many of us were able to stay at home or work from home. They were out in the public. And so we were so concerned about our grocery store workers, and had a safety project, which we were able to do in 2 phases. The first was to get PPE to grocery stores, and so that their workers could have, the masks they needed, hand sanitizer, gloves if necessary. We did signage. So if you come into Detroit stores, many of the stores still have those social distancing stickers and things like that on the floor. We were able to supply that. That's another thing with independent grocery stores. They didn't have access to that. So we saw a lot of the chain grocery stores making sure that their grocers knew how, or their employees knew how to operate safely, that they had the things that they needed. But with independent grocery stores, their margins are so thin, and they may or may not have access to that. So we were able to give them guidelines and things to operate safely. Okay, next slide. The Narrative Project. This is a relatively, again, almost everything we do is collaborative. So we have been working with 10 other organizations to work on changing the narrative around food, and the importance of racial equity and food sovereignty in the food system. What we find is just so many people, when you talk about food, again, we think about access, which is important. However, it is broader than that. And so many people stop at emergency food. And so we have been raising a question around trying to get people to think about why things are the way they are, why a person may need emergency food. What are the things that we can do to make sure people don't get into emergency situations, and to really dig deep and look at some of the systemic issues. Okay, next. And this is a plan. So opportunities, tell stories, use art, design, culture, visual storytelling, all of those things. We want to build a narrative power for Detroit. And what we're hoping is that this is a model for other communities to do the same. Next. We have our annual summit. We just had it in October, our 11th annual summit. This was when we were able, the last 2 years have been virtual, but this was when we were in person. The last one was 2019 that we were in person. And so we bring people together, again, sharing those voices, working across systems, bringing together people who are community members, who eat, everyone eats, but community members who their interest is a personal interest, organization people working in nonprofits, our farmers, all of us coming together and talking about how we can improve the food system. Next, please. Our youth summit, much the same, working with our youth. The last one we had, this one was, that's pictured here was at UDM, University of Detroit Mercy, but bringing our students, our high school and middle school students together to talk about food systems so they can think about those things early, and also exposing them to the type of jobs that are available in the food system beyond the ones that they see normally. So those are some of the things that we did. Next, please. And then out in the community. So one of the things we're always trying to make sure we do is food is one of the most overlooked things. So it's one of the things that is so important and one of the basic needs of life. However, people take it for granted. So we are at any kind of event that we can be at. So we were still able to do some outdoor events over the pandemic. We've been at virtual events, virtual community meetings, but before that we were out and about. And just where people may not be thinking about food, we want them to think about food. If it's transportation, does the bus stop at the grocery store? If it is planning, or did you plan for space for growing, space for people to access food? So just all of those kind of things. If it's finance, are you financing food projects? So we are busy going about and making sure people think about food in a different way. Okay, next. And all of our work is done with community partners. This is some of the coalitions and committees that we are involved in, because our staff is small, but just making sure that we actually have partners with this work. Okay. So I have a poll question that I love for everybody to participate. So one of our main partners is Keep Growing Detroit, and they work with home growers, community gardens, and all of the like in the city of Detroit. So how many farms, gardens do you think there are in the city of Detroit? Are there 20, 45, 108, 777, or 1941? So if you can answer. Okay, so can we show the results? Have most people voted?
Almost everyone. Just I'll give it another 5 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so it was close. The majority said 108, but there are actually 1,941 as of 2020 in the city of Detroit. So Detroit is one of the leaders in urban farming and gardening, which is often not known. And this is the map. All right. Okay, and so Q&A does work. And let me just ask right quick. So thank you, everyone. And I think we were going to take questions at the end. Should we take them at the end, Lily, or do we want to do?
I think let's take them at the end. Is that good with you?
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I will come back to the Q&A questions. Thank you for everybody who put them in there. And then I will just hand it over, pass the mic, so to speak, to Margot Finn, Dr. Finn.
Thank you, Winona. Thank you so much for that. Can everybody hear me? Just give me somebody.
Yes.
Yes, great. Okay. Okay. So I think we're going on to another poll question. I think that's what's next. So let's pull it up. Yes, indeed. All right. I'm the academic. Here we go. Let's do a term. I can explain the difference between the terms food justice and food sovereignty. I'll give you a second to answer. If you are enrolled in the course, and especially if you have access to the Canvas site, I'll take this minute while you're answering to tell you, if you are enrolled in ALA 370, you didn't have access to the Canvas site until sometime this afternoon. I didn't realize that. I had tried to have the sections combined and thought they had been. So hopefully most of the students enrolled in the class now have access to the Canvas site and thus have access to the readings. And I'm getting a sense now. There's a lot of maybe, but please don't ask me to define it. That's fine. I am hoping by the end of this class, people will be confident and comfortable answering yes. Winona actually, I think, just gave us a great definition of food sovereignty, but maybe some of the question here is about the distinction between food justice and food sovereignty. I think, let's see, how we have about 89 to 90% participation. I'm good with that. So I'm gonna move away from this. And if I could have my, oh, it's still open, so I can't. Well, we'll be ready for my first slide shortly here. Okay, now the poll is ended. Yeah, maybe, but please don't ask me to do it. It's the plurality. And a few people have heard the terms but don't know what they mean or have no idea. I'm hoping nobody who actually did the reading has no idea. But again, and not to imply that there is one definition or a clear understanding, but I'm hoping by the end of this speaker series, those of you who are participating in it, will feel like you've got access to actually a flexible set of definitions and ways to think about these two terms. So my job here today is tell you a little bit more about the theme that we've dreamed up for this year's series, tell you a little bit about how the course is structured academically, what assignments in particular, those of you who are completing it for credit will be completing. And then I have a follow-up exercise that I've designed in hopes that anybody who's here, community members, everybody might enjoy and find thought-provoking and enjoyable, but it's optional, it's not required for anybody. So to begin with the theme, so the reading that I was, one of the readings assigned for this week, Nourishing Solidarity, Critical Food Pedagogy and Storytelling for the Community by Tanner Johnson. And this is actually, it's available, if anybody wants to Google that, you'll find the full text online. I don't know about, somebody's asking about making readings available. I'm not sure about all of them, but many of the readings are actually available online. And I think we can probably find a way to make, to get that to participants, certainly. So Tanner Johnson defines food justice as the process of addressing oppressions really of all kinds in the food system, whereas he defines food sovereignty, or takes a definition from somebody of food sovereignty, as the inherent right of all people to have a say in how they feed themselves, which I think connects back to the definition Winona just gave us of the right to define their own food and agriculture systems, right? This importance of having a voice, of having a say in the food that you eat. And whereas food justice is more of the process by which we get to the point that people have the say that they deserve in the food and agricultural systems that affect the foods that they put on their plates. So this question was an attempt to see how many people might have had access to the reading, heard about these things. And the reading for each week, which will typically consist of either about 3 shorter articles or 1 maybe book-length chapter. Although in some cases, at least 1 week, I'm going to have you listening to a podcast. 1 week, as noted, Highlight Hobart is giving us a talk at the Waterways speaker series. And so students enrolled in the class will be asked to either attend that talk or watch the recording. And those are designed to be done before the talks on Tuesday evening, if possible. So sometimes the poll questions may refer to them. The poll questions will also be open-ended and hopefully comprehensible enough for anybody to participate in. But try, if you can, to do the readings before the Tuesday evening presentations. The weekly quizzes that will be posted on Canvas on Wednesday after the presentations and due on Fridays may refer to either the Tuesday evening presentations or to the readings or both. And so there won't be one this week, but you can expect the first quiz to show up next Wednesday after our conversation with Dr. Cantois with a deadline of Friday. Okay, so back to this idea of food sovereignty and people's inherent right to a say in how they feed themselves. The broad question we've convened this particular set of speakers this year to address is, if making dinner, whether we're doing it from Instagram recipes as in this picture that I've got, or however we're doing it, is one of the primary ways that we choose and create the literal textures and flavors of our daily lives, what would it mean to remake dinner in ways that promote greater sovereignty and joy for all? So when talking about food sovereignty, I think we should start, as Johnson does, with the insights that come from Indigenous activists and scholars like Barb Kramer and Dr. David Lewis, 2 that he mentions, about how food access, along with education, were really two of the main weapons that were used to kill and control Indigenous people. So in the Johnson reading, he gives the example of the Canadian government amending the Indian Act in 1885 to outlaw the practice of potlatch. And in the words translated from the Kwakwala, this is from a site that's linked in the footnotes of Johnson's speech. So if you want to hear it in the Kwakwala language, which I highly recommend, you can see that link there. This is the translation though. The word potlatch means to give and comes from a trade jargon Chinook formerly used along the Pacific coast of Canada. Guests witnessing the event are given gifts, and the more gifts they are given, the higher the status achieved by the potlatch host. So the potlatch ceremony also marked important occasions in the likes of the Kuala Kuala Wang. There was so you would have at these ceremonies, there would be the naming of children, marriage, the transferring of rights and privileges, and the mourning of the dead. So it's the end of the translation of their description of potlatch. So in 1883, the following anti-potlatch proclamation was issued, which would become Canadian law 2 years later. It said, every Indian or other person who engages in or assists in celebrating the Indian festival known as the potlatch, or in the Indian dance Tamatamawas, is guilty of a misdemeanor and shall be liable to imprisonment. So, and end quote, that's the end of this act. So again, we have acts saying you can't engage in these important ritual celebrations where you use food and other things to enact your own values and enact the ways and relationships that you want to have with the land. So how and why, not just in the US, but in nation states all over the world, has carceral violence, the threat of imprisonment, been called on to prevent people from celebrating, especially the celebration of giving, and perhaps especially the celebration of the giving of food? And the elevation through practices like potlatch of the ritualized practice of the giving away of one's wealth, often in the form of food. These are some of the questions that I hope that we'll be able to ask and answer together this semester. But as that definition of food sovereignty that Johnson gives us makes clear, food sovereignty is not just for Indigenous people, right? We all have the same inherent right to a say in how we feed ourselves. And one of the ongoing convictions of this speaker series is that we should have a right to a say that is as thoughtfully informed as possible. So what I love about this central image that I've selected by the artist Michaela Goad, who's a member of the Tlingit and Haida tribes, and is the same artist responsible for the central image that I got at Canvas this week. I'll pick a new one every week. I think that the one that I've chosen today that she made for Indigenous Peoples Day, what I like about it is that it evokes the ways that I think the land, nature, berries, fruit, food, what we feed ourselves, and the culinary traditions that we take from our ancestors are all central and among the most profound ways that we do try to have a say in how we feed ourselves. So those are a few words about sovereignty. Now let me turn to joy. The image on the far right here comes from a poster campaign that was started by one of our speakers, Marilyn Wan. She created the I Stand campaign that is referred to in the banner on the bottom of that ad in response to a 2012 billboard campaign in the state of Georgia, by a group called Strong for Life, that depicted fat children looking miserable and saying that their lives were being ruined by their parents' failure to put them on weight loss diets. This billboard campaign was, of course, done in the name of public health. But Marilyn Wan and other activists took issue with it. They said that this was fat shaming, this was inappropriate. And this is what Marilyn told the blog Health at Every Size, which is run by the Association for Size Diversity and Health, when she was talking to them about why she decided to start this campaign, what it meant to her. So she says, quote, "It's hard to feel powerful when you feel like you are completely alone. But when you see hundreds of images of people of all sizes standing up and saying, hey, I love myself and I love my body and my life rocks, well, how powerful is that? We take the finger pointing and finger wagging and blaming of Strong for Life and turn it on its head. Instead of spreading fear and prejudice, we stand against bullying and for joy and life and health," end quote. The Health at Every Size movement challenges the assumptions that many people, including many food systems researchers and practitioners, make about the relationships that exist between body size, diet, and health. So for this year's Food Literacy for All, we've invited a lot of speakers like Marilyn, who have helped challenge some of my former ideas about fatness and its relationships to food, and what exactly health might include, like, for example, finding unconditional joy in your body. I expect my ideas to be further challenged and reshaped and refined by the presentations we're going to see this semester, and I'm just so excited for it. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so getting into some nuts and bolts. This course, as you'll see, has nearly a half a dozen course codes this year. And I hope it goes without saying, I'm not an expert in all of those fields. I don't actually profess in public health. That is not my game. So what is my game? I'm going to tell you a little bit about the instructional unit that I come from, ALA, and how it shapes how I teach. So ALA began as something called university courses, which was invented to house the registration codes for the 1-credit courses that students in the Reserve Officers Training Corps, or ROTC, had to take during the Vietnam War, when none of the other departments in liberal arts and or literature, science, and the arts LSA would host those classes. So it was originally the home for things that didn't belong anywhere else. And that's really what it has remained in some ways. So I call it affectionately the island of misfit toys. It's where assistant deans stash courses that don't belong in other departments. It's where, if you've taken any of the intergroup dialogue courses, those are often hosted in ALA. And it's also where weird interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary courses get started. So Cameron Gibellew, who's the only other dedicated faculty member in ALA and has been for the last 10 years with me, and I have developed something of a divisional educational philosophy, and it's got 3 components, and they're at the top there, right? Our courses are weird multidisciplinary courses, right? That's what I was hired to do. You got to dance with the one who brought you. Number 2, they're engaged learning. Most of our classes are pretty small. They're designed to get you in contact with faculty members and experts and actually talking to people. This course is obviously different. There's, I think, last I checked, almost 270 people, or at some point 270 people in this Zoom, but we have tried to find ways to make it engaging for you. So you can drop questions in the Q&A. We've also got the Miro boards where you can post things and discuss amongst yourselves and upvote things that people are saying and put important quotes to you. And we'll also have a word cloud at the end of every session. If you're looking for more, there is a 1-credit discussion section that meets from 1 to 2 p.m. in person on Wednesdays in the Dana building. If you're available and you want to make this a 3-credit course instead of a 2-credit course, there are still seats open in the course, and I hope that you join us. But I know that most of you are going to be doing this primarily just as a lecture series. And so I have tried to create opportunities for you to connect to each other, because my experience with virtual learning has been that that is really what makes or breaks it for a lot of students. Is, you know, it's one thing to do compelling readings and see good presentations. You still want to be able to connect to other people. So the groups are one of the main ways to do that in this class, and I'll say more about those in a minute. And then applied learning. So we strive in ALA to help build skills that students are actually going to use, whether in future classes, in potential jobs, in student organizations, maybe even to achieve personal goals. We believe that education is supposed to give you tools for living. And the main way that this manifests in this course is that I've tried to make the assignments things that you may actually be asked to do or want to do on your own, which is probably not do academic writing, frankly, which is honestly the way we typically assess student comprehension and performance. So in this class, what you're going to do is be creating infographics, short podcasts, and short documentary films. For the first 2 assignments, you're going to be doing informational interviews with first a food systems researcher and then a food systems practitioner. So one of the reasons we've asked in our registration form, and we're asking that poll question about how many people had direct experience in the food system, is, did you see over half of the people here today have experience in the food systems? We want to connect the people who have experience in the food system to people who don't have as much direct experience with the food system. And these assignments are opportunities for you to do that. They're going to be an informational interview, and there's a lot more resources on Canvas, and we'll be talking about this in more detail in kind of later nuts and bolts sessions, but it shouldn't be more than usually about 15 minutes. So if you do sign up to talk to a student in this class, we're putting together a database that you will only be contacted once, at least, for putting your name in this database. If somebody knows that you do food systems work and wants to cold call you, you can, say, I'm sorry, I already did my time. But if you volunteer to speak to somebody in this class, then you will only be contacted once. For students, again, you've been assigned to a group. It's already been assigned in Canvas. Somebody asked me a question about doing custom groups. I'm sorry, I think we just don't have the capacity. There's too many students, but you have been automatically assigned. These are just automatically generated groups. In Canvas, you can see them. It's at the People tab. And within your groups, I'm going to ask you to seek some representation for these assignments. So for the first one, where you're talking to a food systems researcher, I'm going to ask you to get different representation from different academic disciplines within your group. This is actually inspired by the hiring of GSIs for this course. I should tell you, Jess and Sam were the most outstanding of a really crowded field. And what was cool, as somebody who had to interview these people and look at all their resumes, was that we had applicants from all over the university, from law, from policy, from business, from Ross, from ecology, people in public health. And as we were interviewing them, it was really interesting to see that the answers to their questions, how they were thinking about food, how they were approaching things, was really marked by that training that they were getting. So as you go out and talk to food systems researchers, I'm hoping that within your groups, you'll experience a little bit of that fun sort of that sense of, wow, you can look at food from so many different ways, and people are looking at it from so many different ways. And as you share the shareable infographic and films and podcasts that you make within your group, I'm hoping, again, that'll give you that kind of holistic, interdisciplinary, multiple perspectives kind of look at the food system. The second of these short assignments that you're doing on your own, talking to a food systems professional. In that one, I'm going to ask you to seek representation from parts of the food system within your group. So somebody might talk to somebody who's involved in direct agricultural production and farming. Somebody might talk to somebody who's involved in maybe a cool startup that's trying to do something new with food packaging. And somebody else might talk to somebody who works at U of M dining halls. That is a way of being involved in the food system, but so different parts of the food system. Some of these are a little bit more challenging, I know that, and so we're going to try and create some opportunities, particularly around the part of the food system that we generally think of as food waste, including hopefully being able to tour the back end of one of the cafeteria dining halls, and perhaps go to an organization like Food Gatherers that deals with gleaning and redistributing food that would otherwise be wasted in our community. Next slide. And then for the capstone, your group is going to work together to produce a single shareable, either a larger kind of magazine style infographic or a longer podcast, a longer documentary. And there's going to be details about all of these assignments in the on Canvas and eventually. And that one's going to focus on either investigating a problem or a solution in the food system. And you can work together to decide, and hopefully the talks will give you all kinds of ideas on both sides of this. What's going on in the food system that we really want to change? And what are people doing to try to affect those systems level changes that I love that Winona was giving us so many great examples about what the Detroit Food Policy Council is doing, right? So the group assignments, they haven't made, particularly if you've just joined, I'm not sure exactly how that's working in Canvas. So if you don't have a group yet, we will get you into one soon. And that's something that you can contact me or the GSIs about. Okay, what else do I need to tell you? Next slide, yes. Okay, the group, let me say something about groups. There is no requirement for you to contact your groups any more than is necessary for you to figure out the logistics of who's doing what part, or how are you going to talk. But I would encourage you to find a way to that you all enjoy, to get in touch and stay in touch all semester, whether that's having a weekly Zoom meeting that you get together and chat about the talks and whatever else is going on in class, or maybe having a Slack channel or a group chat. Find something that you don't hate that can keep you connected throughout the semester. Students in past classes that I've had that have done that have said it's enhanced their learning. They've made friends. It's good all around. So find a way to connect with your group, please. And to those ends, next slide, please. I've designed a little getting to know you exercise that you could do with your group if you wanted to, perhaps meeting over a Zoom, and even if you're not in the class, consider doing this. I think it sounds like fun. I hope you think it sounds like fun. This is adapted again from that reading that I've mentioned a few times, Senator Johnson's article, which he adapted that article from a presentation that he gave where he actually served people a meal. Gosh, I wish I could be doing that now. I cannot. But for the main course, he served them cedar planked salmon and asked them to think about and discuss some questions. And you could do this either getting together and sharing a meal and talking about what you each are eating in different places, or perhaps there's a food that you all enjoy and have access to, and you could all get access to that same food and then talk about it maybe even at different times, your different responses to these questions. So pick how you'd like to do it. Those are two ideas. Here's the list of questions that I thought it might be fun to discuss. Where does the food you're eating come from? Who do you think grew it and produced it? How did it get to you? Who cooked it? How does it feel? How does it taste? What does it mean to you? How do you feel about it? How much say, again, that sovereignty question, how much say do you feel like you had in how it got to your plate? What joys or sorrows or anxieties does it elicit? In what ways does it nourish you? And what might it still leave you hungry for? So an exercise to consider doing. All right, next slide. Lastly, and briefly from me, why social media shareables? In part, this does come from my philosophy that we should be doing practical things that connect to the things students most may actually be doing. Also, I think it'll be fun, I hope, you can think about how to make good arguments, the reliability of your sources, how to consider your audience, how to think about questions of style, presentation, effectiveness of communication in any form. I'd like you to think about how to deliver those things in an infographic. My image here is actually a close-up of, and you've got, if you're on the Canvas site, then you have access to the whole infographic. This is student work, so this is a close-up of a larger student infographic. And when she turned this into me, my first thought on seeing it was like, wow, I want to share this. Like, it was just such, it was, I think, I hope you guys like it too. I think a beautifully designed, thoughtful, detailed reflection of the conversations that we've been having all semester. And I was excited to share it with my friends on social media. I know she had shared it already and was proud to create something that she could share with other people, show off. I hope that you will be excited to talk to other people about the experiences that you're having in this class. And so I'm hoping that the assignments will give you an opportunity to create things where you can share that with others in an appealing, attractive, and kind of social media friendly way. And also that we can make bigger shareables. So we can combine films and podcasts into longer things that people can listen to, like, an hour long, here's a sampling of food literacy for all in 2020. So there are questions about people not being in groups. Again, there may be some Canvas issues. You can contact me or the GSIs. And again, if you have access to the syllabus, then our contact info is all in there. Okay, that's my spiel. Thanks for being here. We're gonna have a lot of fun this semester.